Very pleased to have two alumni from Marian, Dr. Maggie May, who's Associate Dean Mathematics at UW-Fond du Lac, and Amy Sue Vruwink, who is the assembly person from the 70th District. Okay, got that right. We'll also talk about liberal arts, Marian University, and what it has meant to them on their careers. Okay, Dr. Dyke.
Okay, thank you. Boy, everybody does sit way in the back here, don't they? They always make that joke when we're speaking that everybody's in the back of the church. It's true from up here. I like to tell people stories about things, so let me tell you about three people who I know who have had pretty significant parts of their lives determined by the liberal arts. My son-in-law is named Jared Larson, and he just moved my daughter and their 4 children to a little town near San Francisco because he has a new job out there. He's a video game designer, and he's now working in the distribution of video games through social media networks. Now, he's not a graduate of Marian, and in fact he went to South Dakota State University. To my knowledge, in the 1990s, when he graduated from there, South Dakota State was not the international center of video game design, and I don't believe it is now. If it had been, social media didn't exist at the time that he graduated anyway. Second person I'd like to tell you about is my nephew, Christopher. He graduated in the late 1990s. Because, you know, all of our kids are about the same age. He graduated in the late 1990s from the State University of New York at Binghamton with a major in philosophy. And after getting 4 years of the, what do you do with a major in philosophy joke, he became the butt of even more humor by taking a job in a t-shirt warehouse. Did sort of answer the question. I will point out here that I did not make any fun of him for getting a philosophy degree, because I think that's a good idea. The manager of the warehouse absolutely loved having Christopher working for him because besides the manager, Chris was the only person in the warehouse who knew where all of the t-shirts were. After doing that for a while, Chris and some of his friends decided that they were going to move to Boston and get something more academic, college-related for a job. He ended up being hired to work at a bank, which hired him specifically because he did not have a degree in banking or finance. They told him, we can teach you the banking stuff you need. We need somebody with a degree in philosophy who can understand how things are done and why they're done and how we can do them better. Third person to tell you about is a Marian graduate, Andrea Hey. She's a communication graduate and was one of my advisees when I was communication faculty. I had one of the best conversations I ever had with anyone when Andrea was a freshman and I was advising her for the first time, because talking with her was like an auction. She kept trying to bid down the length of time it would take to get her degree. It went from 4 years to 3.5. Then it went to 3, and then when she said, can I do this in 2.5 years? I said, what are you trying to do to yourself, young woman? You're going to die if you try to do your degree here in 2.5 or 3 years. She ended up staying for 4. She became the editor of the Sabre student newspaper at the time. She then made us very proud by getting accepted to New York University for a master's degree in the journalism program. Then made me even prouder by becoming the on-air host of news programs at Nebraska TV in Kearney, Nebraska. Andrea emailed me this week, and don't tell anyone you know this because it's probably not for public consumption. She is planning to leave television to go back to NYU for a position in their media-related staff because she wants to move herself into the academic world and is already talking about getting a doctorate. There's 3 people: a video game designer, a philosophy guy who does something in banking, and someone who's about to become an ex-TV reporter. What's a common theme with all of those people? I will say that the common theme here is that these three very successful people are not successful because they were trained for specific jobs, but because of a couple of things. One of which is God-given talent, and all three of them have it. And there's a whole lot of talent out there in the world, and I see it all over the place every day. But besides their God-given talent, they all went through liberal arts curricula that really helped them to become lifelong learners. And we're talking about three different institutions here: South Dakota State, SUNY Binghamton, and Marian University, which are all pretty different places. All of them were exposed to a broad set of skills through the liberal arts. We call them here, and you can move your lips along with me if you want to, critical thinking, knowledge acquisition, effective communication, global perspectives, and socially responsible action. Collectively, that's our student learning outcomes. And they're similar every place you go in the liberal arts. Now, one of the challenges that's facing higher ed right now is trying to hit the moving target of jobs for our students when they graduate. And you will not find any faculty member here who is not concerned about jobs that students will get when they graduate. That target moves not only in space over where those jobs are, and my son-in-law Jared going to California to be able to do his job. Those jobs move in time. And what I mean by that is we have to hit a moving target of what the jobs will be in the future. The class of 2016 arrives here in August 2012. If we train them for the jobs of August 2012, we've done them a grave disservice. We have to train people, we have to aim for the jobs of May 2016 and beyond, when we don't even know what those jobs will be. And again, my son-in-law Jared, working in video games and social media, that did not exist when he graduated in 1999. That's not really a long time. This is an international concern. I'm currently reading The Penguin History of Canada, and over the weekend I came across this quote. It said, "Canadians in the mid-20th century aspired to a job for life, and many actually had one as far as the vicissitudes of the Depression and World War II allowed. That had gone by the wayside by the 1990s. According to a government study, today's worker will have, on average, approximately 3 careers and 8 jobs over a lifetime." So the question for us in the liberal arts then is, how do we help today's students manage their working lives? I believe that it's the liberal arts that will help the students navigate their futures, because since this report was done in the 1990s in Canada, we've probably already moved beyond the 3 careers and 8 jobs to some larger number of that. There was a report that came out in the UK this week from their Office of Statistics. According to them, 1/3 of all of the children who were born in 2012 will make it to age 100. You're going to have more than 3 jobs, 3 careers and 8 jobs over the course of your life if you live to 100 years on that. That's to me what the liberal arts are all about. So again, enjoy your lunches, enjoy the rest of the program today, because this academic symposium is really a tremendously good thing that we've got going on here. So thank you.
Because this is informal, it is lunchtime, I would still be remiss by not thanking Dr. DeSalvo and the administration for the wonderful support that they have given to this academic symposium process at Marian University. This is the 9th annual, And we look forward to try to figure out what in the world we're going to go for the 10th annual, because we have to build upon the success that we've had for this one, which has already been very successful. Now we have 2 people, and we haven't really figured this out ahead of time. So since you are both alumni, I have either you could come up to the podium here, or I do have a mobile mic that you could just stand and talk whatever you may feel a little more comfortable. So Maggie, Amy, what do you want to do? You come up here? Okay.
Either or, whichever makes people more comfortable. You want to go first? I'll motion, go ahead.
I'll do it.
All right. That way I can roam. I'm better at this because I use my hands to talk because I was a communication major. My name is Amy Vruwink, and I graduated in 1997. And I graduated with a communication major and a pre-law minor and a women's studies minor. And I was one of those students who Mary Klein was my advisor as well as my professor. And I would say, oh, and she's like, well, you're on track. And I'm like, oh, I can graduate in 3.5 years? Great, that's what I want to do. And I grew up on a dairy farm. I'm from a large farm family. And my parents said, why are you rushing through your life so quickly? They're like, you're going to college, enjoy it. You know, get involved, enjoy college. Don't rush your way through school. They're like, enjoy it, get the most out of it. And that's what Marian allowed me to do. My liberal arts education, I was involved from everything. I played ball, I played volleyball here. I was president of the student senate here for 2 years. I was in our communication organization for our comm. I was a first-year student leader. I was an ambassador for admissions. So I tried to do everything because coming to Marian allowed me to be involved in everything. If I was going to school, I just didn't want to be a bump on a log and sit and watch my life go by. I wanted to be active, and I wanted to be involved, and I wanted to meet as many people as I possibly could. And Marian allowed me to do that. But one of the things, as I'm a state representative, I ran for office in 2000 back home in central Wisconsin between Stevens Point, Marshfield, Wisconsin Rapids, is where I grew up. I ran for office in 2000, and I lost. Out of 21,000 votes cast, I lost by 97 votes in a recount. I'm sorry, not a recall, a recount. I know that's the theme lately, so that's what I was thinking, in a recount. So unfortunately, I lost, but I thought, you know something, I'm not going to give up. Just because I don't first succeed, you try and try again. And at the time, I worked for my congressman. I worked for Congressman Dave Obey, who was one of the longest-serving congressmen in Congress, and also chairman of Appropriations Committee. And I worked for him at home in the district office. Actually, I interned for him when I was a senior here at Marian. So I interned because I love politics. I said, Marian, like, can I do this? Can I really kind of build some of my stuff around working for him and working on his campaign? And she said, absolutely, Amy Sue. She's like, you can do this. And so we set it up, and I was able to go back home to Wausau to actually work on his campaign for re-election for Congress. And so I worked for him. I worked for the Minnesota Farm Bureau first. I went over to Minnesota. I ran for Alice in Dairyland my senior year of college here, and I ran for Alice. I didn't win Alice, so I'm like, oh, I wanted to be the ag woman to promote agriculture throughout the state of Wisconsin, so I didn't get to be Alice. But I said, well, you know, I'm going to go work for the Farm Bureau of Minnesota. My parents said, go away, and get experience, right? Go away, get experience, don't come home and live with us right away. Go home, go away, get experience, you can always come back home, Amy Sue. You can always come back home, but when you're young and you have the ability to do it, go. Go away and experience life, experience how other people live, and see what it's like, and you can always come back home. And I'm like, okay, so I went to Minnesota, loved working for the Farm Bureau. I had 11 counties in southeastern Minnesota that I worked with, and then I said, I was homesick. I was homesick. I admitted I called and I'm crying, I'm like, I just want to come home. My mom's like, I feel like that was when you first went to Marian and you were in training camp and you were sad because there was no other students there except for the girls on the volleyball team, and that there wasn't enough people, and you're like, uh-oh, is this what college is really like? And so I would call home and I would be like, can I come home now? Can I come home? And the wonderful thing was that my internship paid off to work for my congressman. So I got to work for my congressman, and so he hired me. So he hired me back to Wisconsin, so I got to come back and live with my parents for a short time. And until I moved to Wausau and worked for him. And then I worked for him and I ran, and he's like, you know, Amy, so after you lost, he's like, I think you should run again. I'm like, really? I'm like, that was too personal for me. I hate to lose. I hate to lose. I'm a very competitive person, and I hate to lose, and I don't want to give up, and I don't want to give in, but I don't know if I can take rejection like that again, because that was a blow to anybody's ego, let me tell you. I'm not an egomaniac, but oh, holy smokes, when I'm like, you're born and raised in a community and people go against you, you're like, what is wrong with you? You're my neighbor. What's going on? Why don't you like me? Maybe so you're kind of young, you're only 24. And I said, shouldn't matter how young or old you are in life, if you want to go after something, you should be able to go after it. And so after I decided to make the decision to run again, I ran again, and I was fortunate enough that I was elected to my seat. And so I've been holding this for the past 10 years. Now we've gone through, the last year and a half in the legislature has been quite interesting, as you've seen on the news, because you can't go anywhere and across the country without knowing where Wisconsin is now. And it's we're more than just cheese hats and cows. So that's pretty exciting for me, because I'm like, oh, they're like, oh, Wisconsin. And I was there the night that they took the legislation to end collective bargaining. And I can always remember Dr. Rick Whaley talking about the labor unions and the importance of that. And I can honestly tell you, if I had not gone to Marian, it's really not a large part of the University of Wisconsin curriculum. And Dr. Whaley thought it was very important that we understood the importance of labor unions. Whether you agree with them or disagree with them, there's a history there, and you must know your history so you don't repeat it. And I can remember him talking about this, and I'm like, and we were going through that night, where they pulled the bill, and all of a sudden they canceled all these meetings, and they ended 50 years of labor peace in Wisconsin. 50 years of labor peace was ended, just like that. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm like, I just kind of want to call Dr. Whaley and be like, uh-oh, now what do we do? Because there's no precedence for this. Now what do we do? And the first thing I did is I wanted to call back to Marian. I wanted to call back to my college. Because here they gave me the tools to be successful. And the tools, you can take that in any context you want. But a tool that, critical thinking, I am a Democrat and I have Republicans on my committees that said, Amy, so you ask so many questions. Do you ever stop asking questions? And I'm like, part of my training was critical thinking. You have to learn to think for yourself. Just because somebody tells you something, I don't necessarily believe it. So I have to go back and I have to research and I have to check the facts, because somebody can tell me something, but just to tell me something so I can vote, so they get my vote, so I just go along with it. And I'm like, that's not how I was trained. I was trained that I need to ask a lot of questions, and I needed to do the research. I can remember Mary Klein telling me that you need to read 3 sources of media every day. You need to get, and this is just when the internet was becoming a big thing, so it was kind of scary. It wasn't like it is now. And to go out there and to read, and back home I got my newspaper from back home, had it sent to college, Marshfield News Herald, had it sent here, and then I would read that, and read the Wisconsin Rapids paper, because that's the other big paper where I live, and read the Journal Sentinel. And so I would read these things. So every day was trying, I got to read 3 sources of news every day. But now, in public policy, our medium is so much more than just reading newspapers. It's reading blogs, reading Facebook, and all the wonderful things that it entails. But really to be a critical thinker and to be an effective communicator. If I can't communicate my stance and why I vote the way I vote, then I'm out of a job. And my job reviews every 1.5 years for the people in my district. If I don't do a good job in 1.5 years and I don't communicate with them well, and I think I'm some princess on a podium, I'm finished. Because that's not going to work where I come from. And people expect, regardless of your gender, you roll up your sleeves and you get to work. And that is what I have done. But coming to Marian allows me to think for myself, not only that, but allows me to encompass what other people are saying and what they believe. Just because they believe something different than me doesn't mean that they're right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and they're wrong. But allows me, when I came here, allowed me to look at the scope through other people's eyes. And not to be so judgmental. And to say, okay, well, I see it this way and this is the only way I see it. But through my philosophy class, and foundations to Christian experience, that I had Dr. Schimpf, and he exposed us to other religions. I grew up Catholic. I'm a Catholic. So I grew up Catholic, but I'm like, all these other religions that I've only heard of were always kind of scary to me. And I went to public education until I came to Marian. My parents were very happy because they were Catholic, and obviously that was very exciting for them. But it exposed me to other religions, to other beliefs. That it's okay to have a different religion. It's okay to worship differently. It's all right, but I should understand that. And without Marian's experience, I would never have had that. I would never have had that exposure to be okay with other religions and to understand them. And for me to be respectful of people with other beliefs. Because that was something that's very important. In my line of work today, that's very important. Because it's easy to use religion as somewhere to be like, oh, look at me. This is my religion. Look at what I am. And it's easy to tear down somebody else's beliefs. But coming here, that allowed me to respect other people's beliefs and get to know what other religions are, what they mean, and how they worship. So that was something that I also believe that my liberal arts experience was very unique, and that you wouldn't have if you go to the university system. Not that it's not a wonderful institution, but it's a very different experience. But just a sense of community. The community service requirement that we all have, that you have to require. I worked with an Alzheimer's patient over at the Franciscan home, and the woman had Alzheimer's, so she forgot me all the time. But that was okay, because I could understand her illness and what that meant. I'd be like, "Hi, Jean, how's it going?" She's like, "Oh, it's so wonderful to see you. Who are you?" But that was okay. But it was part of my community service. But it exposed me to something different than what I was accustomed to and the only thing that I knew. So it was a new experience. It's kind of scary. Anytime you start something new, you're kind of like, "Oh, should I do this? Should I do this?" Makes me kind of uncomfortable. But that uncomfortable feeling is okay to have. And I learned that from working with Jean and having that exposure to her and understanding that this was her illness and this is how it was going to be. And no matter how much I thought I was breaking through to her, that it was progressively it was going to get worse, and it did. But it exposed it to me, because then my grandfather was diagnosed with it. And so I thought, okay, I know how to deal with this now. Good thing I've had this life experience. And it's a good thing I was exposed, because if I didn't, I probably would approach it very differently. Like, oh, this is clinical, and this is nice, and I just got to get through it and get on. But there is something about coming from this university that teaches you compassion. And it teaches you passion for doing what you believe in and what you love. As a student, I'd love to go back to my dorm room, whether it was a neighbor hall or was the courtyard, and I loved just being part of this community, because I was involved in a sorority here and helped start it, initiated it, and you get it off the ground, which is exciting. But I mean, I love my friendships, all different people, all different backgrounds, but it was wonderful. But the sense of community and of looking at people and bringing people together was what really meant a lot to me. And when I had to leave Marian, I cried and cried for days. Because I'm like, now I'm here, now I don't want to leave. I'm like, I don't want to leave. And Mary's like, "It's okay, Amy Sue," kind of like what my parents said to me. "It's okay, you can leave, you can always come back. But you got to leave now. It's your time, you have to leave now." And so I was sad, because that meant I had to give up all my friendships. You know, you all laugh. But someday, trust me, some of you will be in that same predicament where you're going to be like, "Oh, I'm really going to be sad." Because this was my home, this was my community, this is who I am, it was my identity. And then you have to find a different identity when you graduate and move on. Regardless, if you're a traditional or non-traditional student, a sense of community for Marian is really is true, and it's sincere. And so this, I mean, my well-roundedness, when I talk about being well-rounded, this liberal arts education, and if people now, if you're not in academics or academia, people look at you and say, "Liberal arts, liberal," and it's like, no. That means I'm well-rounded. It means I can understand the differences and celebrate differences. I mean, just because the color of our skin may be different, or the way we practice faith may be different, but it's our differences that we need to celebrate, and that's something that I was taught here at Marian. I can tell you I was giving a Veterans Day speech this last fall, and some of my Vietnam veterans came up to me, and they don't like my politics, which is fine, because I can celebrate our differences, but I put that phraseology in my speech. I said, we can celebrate our differences, and we can come together to celebrate these things. And they said, "You know, Amy Sue, I may not like you, and I don't agree with your politics, but what you said is true. We can celebrate our differences." And to me, that was a total breakthrough, because it's like we may be very different, and the way we approach things, the way we think can be very different, but it's okay to celebrate those differences. And to say, yes, we are different, but we are unique, but we can come together. And unfortunately, that is not the case now. It's not, I mean, Marian has instilled me in many, many things. Servant leadership, that if I'm going to lead, I have to lead by example. You can't be a hypocrite and say one thing and then go do something else. And part of that is just being ingrained in me and my livelihood and what I do for a living, but also where I've come from and where in my education. And so it's not every day in my profession as a state representative in Madison, it's not every day that I get the honor to be back at a private university. And the people that I travel with are all alums from the university system. And so the way we approach things are very different. And I think it's very unique. And I like the way I approach things. But I can notify, I can see the difference of the university alum, like, you know, so I think I'm going to have to start some kind of Marian College alum event in Madison, just because UW-La Crosse does theirs, and Madison does theirs, and Whitewater does theirs. But I'm like, but the private colleges and universities, I believe, could have a stronger voice. And I think that we could come together to celebrate those, our private colleges and universities throughout the state of Wisconsin. Because I'm proud to be an alum from Marian University. I'm proud of my education. I'm happy that I worked hard and I paid for it, and that I got through, and that I did get grants and scholarships, but that's all what made my experience unique. And that's all that I'm happy and faithful to be a Marian alum. So I appreciate my liberal arts college. I hope I didn't talk too long. Is there any questions that any of you have for me before I pass the microphone to somebody else? I hope I kept you awake, because after you eat, you normally get sleepy. And so I try to keep it paced going well, so we don't fall asleep. Does anybody have any questions for me before I hand off the mic? I'm sorry, I really didn't have a script, so I hope that was okay. I'm not much of a reader, ask Mary. I need to talk with my hands and I can't look down because then it doesn't sound very sincere to me. And I don't get my point across. So the effective communication needs so I can look at you all in the eye and talk to you without having to look down here, because then I'm not very effective if I'm doing this with all of you. So I hope that was okay. All right, well thank you very much for your time. I'm honored to be back.
I'm a teacher, so I'm always more comfortable up at the front of the room. My name's Maggie May. As you heard, I'm the Associate Dean at the University of Wisconsin-Fond du Lac. I'm also an Assistant Professor of Mathematics. I graduated from Marian in 1991. And some of you might be thinking, well, of course she supports the liberal arts, of course she supports higher education, she works for a college, she has to do that. You'll find it's really the opposite. I work for a college because I believe in education. I believe that it has the power to profoundly transform people's lives. So I want to talk a little bit about how liberal arts has affected my life, and maybe go a little beyond that and talk about education in general in my family. I grew up in Fond du Lac. My parents have been living in the same house here on 11th Street since I was 2 years old. My father was a carman for the Sioux Line Railroad, later became the Wisconsin Central. And when I was growing up, we were not real well off. One of my earliest memories is of my mother pulling me and my sister on one of these little blue plastic sleds with the rope on the front. She wasn't pulling us to the sledding hill. She had that rope strapped across her chest, both me and my little sister on that sled holding bags of groceries. Because every winter my dad would get laid off and we'd have to sell the car to make the house payment. That was the only way to keep the roof over our head. I never knew we were poor, I just thought that's what people did, was they sold their car in the winter. Turns out, I found out later that wasn't really the case. So after years of kind of struggling like that, my dad worked hard and provided as best he could for us, but my mom decided she wanted to go to school and try to do a little better for our family. And at that time, she couldn't afford the tuition to go to college, so she enrolled at Marine Park Technical College. Didn't have a lot of choice in terms of majors because she couldn't afford textbooks. She had a brother that had a degree in industrial engineering, so he gave her his textbooks, and that was her chosen major. So, but that really was the start of propelling her life and our life in a different direction. While she was a student at Marine Park, she got an internship at Mercury Marine. And after she graduated, she started working there full-time, and she was able to use their tuition reimbursement program. They have a great tuition reimbursement program, and she actually enrolled here at Marian. And she was able to get a bachelor's degree in business, and never would have been able to do that without the help of Mercury Marine. Some years later, let me just back up to myself again, I was a little bit of a special needs kid, not in the traditional sense, but I was always very advanced in math. They put me in the gifted classes, and the Fond du Lac School District was super accommodating. They worked really hard to give me differentiated instruction and different opportunities to get ahead, and I got way ahead in my math classes. By the time I hit my freshman year of middle school, I had surpassed the math curriculum that was available to me. So Marian College at the time, now Marian University, was kind enough to take me under their wing. Ron the board and Roy Johnson, who's now retired, worked with me over the summer. And at the same time I started high school, I started taking math classes here at Marian. And it was just a fabulous opportunity for me. Again, my family would have never been able to afford to do that if my mom hadn't come to school here and got her degree. So it really had a profound impact. If it weren't for that education, my life would be very different today. So I had a wonderful experience here at Marian. We talked about trying to graduate quick. I think I got done in 3.5 years. So I actually got my bachelor's degree just a week after my 18th birthday, which was pretty cool, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have done that. I went on and got a master's degree in math education from UW-Oshkosh, and finally a PhD in math from UW-Milwaukee. And I started teaching math at University of Wisconsin-Fond du Lac, and I've been there for 5 years now. I was recently promoted to Associate Dean. And what's interesting about that, Certainly my graduate degrees prepared me for the job teaching math. I needed to learn all that calculus and all that topology to be able to do that. But for the job that I do now, the skills that I really needed to do that job are those skills that I learned here at Marian in the first 4 years of my undergraduate education. It's about critical thinking, problem solving, communication, group dynamics, having a perspective of the world, having concern for your fellow man. And those are the things I learned here. And those are the things that enable me to do my job today. And it wasn't just the content that I learned in these classes. Know that the things you learn in your classes are very important, but what's also makes such a huge difference is the people that impact your lives. I remember Michelle Majeski and Larry Reynolds and Michael Ketterhagen, and all of you that are students here probably have those people impacting your lives right now, and they inspired me to want to go on and share this gift of education with other people because it made such a difference for me. It made me want to go on and help people to get an education, and I'm so passionate about what I do right now. I'm so grateful to be able to work at a liberal arts school and to be able to see other people get that opportunity to learn and better themselves. And I work for an access institution. So we take on some what we call high-risk students, people that might not be successful in college, and we do everything we can to prepare them and get them ready for a 4-year program. And I'm just so passionate about that. So this question was being thrown around this morning, does everybody need a college education? Of course not. We shouldn't make people go to college if they don't want to. But we need to make sure that opportunity is there for people that want to learn. Instead of asking, how do we make sure people aren't failing in college and crushing under debt, we need to be asking, how can we support them? How can we help people get through school? How can we make it more affordable? How can we help people get an education? So when people come to you and you have an opportunity to teach someone, to help them learn, you got to seize that opportunity. We have to go out and find ways to help people get that education. So did my Marian education help me? Absolutely. I would not be the person I am today. My whole family would be different. My little sister actually, also a graduate of Marian. She was able to attend after I did. And she went on and got a degree as a nurse practitioner, and she's doing that now. So the whole family would really be completely different if it weren't for this educational system in Fond du Lac, and it's just really made a big difference for me, and I hope it does for all of you too.
Again, I would like to certainly thank Representative Vruwink to give us that down-to-earth speech in terms of what Marian meant, and Maggie, outstanding. I'm very glad to have you here. I'm sure it was enlightening in terms of the students, and I'm sure it helped the faculty better understand what we're all about when we are here and dealing with the students. Again, there is a 2:20 session in Stair. There will be Marian faculty talking about liberal arts at Marian and also going forward. What are we going to do to answer some of the questions that have been raised and some other questions that haven't been raised yet in terms of the structure and the format of the educational process at Marian University. And we'll hope to build upon all those good things that you've been able to take with you and able to lean upon in your lives as you left here. Thank you very much. I appreciate your attendance today.